Hey, this is Jess, and in this video I'd like to go over the student profile page. To access the student profile page, you'll need to go to either a classroom dashboard or a group dashboard. Let's go ahead and open up this classroom. Here you can see the list of students in this class. I'll go ahead and pick this student to take a closer look at. Alright, so this is the student profile page. Right away you can see the student's avatar, username, school ID if you've set one, preferences, which classroom they're a part of, and the number of coins they currently have. Over on the right, you can choose to edit or delete the student, as well as review any extended response questions they've answered, both ones waiting to be graded and past responses you've already reviewed. Let's look at what options we have when we go to edit the student. Here, you can adjust their personal information and preferences. If a student changes classrooms, this is where you can update that setting. There are a few preferences here that I want to be sure to point out. Now, these are all things you can adjust for the entire classroom, but sometimes you might want to adjust them on an individual basis. The first preference is whether students should see remediation videos when they struggle on the practice questions. I recommend keeping this option on, but you might occasionally want to turn it off for some students. You can also change what happens when this particular student gets all the questions correct in the tryout, the first activity of the day. For some accelerated students, you might want to let them skip more curriculum than the average student. If you're ever unsure what these letters stand for, just hover your cursor over each letter and you can see what activity it represents. You can also adjust how much free time each student gets in the mall. Based on how quickly students get through the curriculum each day, you might want to change this on an individual basis. And finally, at the bottom here, there's an option to delete the student, which you can use if they were created by mistake or transferred out of your school. And then just be sure to save any changes you make. Now, I've gone over how to review extended response questions before, but this is a quick way to find just the answers this particular student has submitted. If you want to review their answers with them one-on-one, this is the best way to find them. As you can see, this student has submitted several responses, and I can view each one by clicking on the row. If the student had some responses still waiting to be graded, they would appear right above here, and you could grade them as usual. Let's head back to the student profile. Next is this section with several individual reports listed. Let's briefly check out each one of these reports. And first up is the quiz scores report. This report gives a color-coded look at all the quizzes the student has completed so far. If the student has worked on multiple grades, just use this drop-down to select a different grade. You can scan the chart pretty quickly to identify any quizzes the student has struggled with. If this was my student, I would probably take a look at this quiz to see why it's so much lower than the others. I can click the score to see exactly which questions the student got correct and incorrect, along with their answer for each question. Then I could either assign some extra work to focus on this concept or work one-on-one with the student knowing exactly what they need to work on. And don't forget, there's a button up here to download or print this report. The next report is the Standards Progress Report. Here, I can view each standard and how close the student is to mastering it. This drop-down menu makes it easy to swap between sets of standards, and the tabs at the top allow you to quickly switch between grades. If you only want to see the standards a student is struggling with, you can use these boxes at the top to toggle them on or off. This is another way to figure out what they need a little extra work on so I can personalize each student's content. Up at the top here, I can choose between the overall content or the pre and post assessments if they've taken them. And just like the other reports, there's a print button up here if you want to use this information in a conference or for your records. Let's take a look at this student's report card next. This provides a nice simple view of all the content they've completed so far, along with the date it was completed and their score. If you want to check their progress over a certain time period, just use these fields and click the download button. This report is particularly helpful to see how quickly they're getting through the Wowzers curriculum, and you can keep an eye on their overall scores. This is always helpful during parent conferences and to keep students accountable. The activity report is similar but includes a bit more detail. This report is a monthly view of all the individual activities the student has completed, how long they spent on them, and their score on each one. And just like the other reports, you can download it from right up here. Alright, back to the student profile. The next section is for assigning the student temporarily to either a full section, a day of curriculum, or an individual activity. After they complete this content you assign, they go back to what they were working on before. This is useful if a student really struggled on a particular piece of curriculum, so you want to give them a little extra remediation or let them try again after an intervention. Let's say I noticed in the reports that this student had a tough time with the fractions content in 6th grade. I feel like 5th grade might be a better fit for her, so I can assign that 5th grade section to her. After she finishes this section, she'll go back to what she was working on in 6th grade, and I can quickly see if it helped her or not. The last section of the student profile I want to go over with you is the active path option. Right now, you can see she's working on the default classroom path. However, if she continued to struggle with fractions, I might want to assign her to this group path I have set up for some of the other students. I can just select the group path and then click Assign. This lets me easily swap students to existing group paths if necessary. Okay, that's it for today. I recommend using the student profile page to really personalize Wowzers for each student and keep an eye on how they're doing. As usual, thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time.